Welcome to all of you who have joined us already. We're going to be starting today's webinar in just about 3 or 4 minutes. I wanted to welcome you and let you know that if you are here to see and hear all about exceeding your fundraising goals, even during inflation, featuring Barbara O'Reilly and other fundraising experts, you are in the right place. If this is not what you intended to come to, you're still in the right place because inflation and economic challenges are real, and we all want to know what we can do to go further. So please stick with us. For those of you who have joined, I will come on a couple, probably 1 or 2 more times, and then I'll do a hard beginning so that we can get a good solid recording, because today's entire session will be available on demand to everyone who's here for today's session, as well as to those who may have to leave or miss, but please do stick around. So we'll be starting in just a few moments. In the meantime, if you want to check out your chat feature or your question feature in the control panel in Zoom, and just give us a shout out. Let us know where you're from. Let us know about your organization. Time permitting, I try to make a few plugs here and there. We can never, get enough good awareness. So let us know where you're from and what you're all about. Welcome. For those of you joining on, we have as if the virtual doors had opened here and a whole bunch of people just came through out from the autumn cold or warmth, wherever you happen to be. Lots of people piling in. So we have a pretty good crowd here today. So I'm going to try and give as many people a chance to get in. But again, if you're joining in progress, we will be recording today's entire session. We're just about 2 minutes away from today's session, exceeding your fundraising goals, even during inflation and other economic challenges, which didn't fit on the title, wouldn't balance quite as nicely, but you get it. So thank you for bearing with us. And it looks like people are coming in from all over the country: Arizona, California, South Carolina. Oh, we're actually going to be there next week. That's great for a local lunch and learn. Canada, we're international. I'm going to fill up the next couple of minutes while everyone waits, just with a few shout outs to those folks who joined us and let us know where they're from. If you're just joining, please feel free to drop a note in the chat box and let us know. But, we have life services alternatives out in Campbell, California. Janice, I think I'm saying it right, developmental services, helping adults with disabilities, Rialto Theater. We've got quite a few folks coming in here from a lot of different locations. There's no way I'll be able to keep up with this, but I'll do my best. Alliance for the Children out of North Carolina, a number of arts organizations, across the US and Canada, as I'm looking at right now. We have a good showing from Canada. All right. Way to represent Canada. And we've got a number of others here just from different parts of the country. So thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I'm going to give you a little warm up here, and then you're going to hear a pause, and I'm going to go into full acting mode so that I can do a good solid intro. So we get a good intro, but you are here for the Exceeding Your Fundraising Goals, even during an inflation webinar featuring Barbara O'Reilly from Windmill Hill Consulting, as well as Ken Cleve, who's a fundraising expert across auctions and events. We'll be doing more formal introductions. I'm David Jost, Chief Marketing Officer of Ariba. And there are opportunities for you to ask questions throughout. This is very interactive. chat, put things into the chat. We'll have some polls. We're going to have a good time today, and we're going to forget all about the economic woes and talk about the hope that's out there. So thank you for joining us. So with that, welcome to Exceeding Your Fundraising Goals, Even During Inflation, featuring Barbara O'Reilly and other fundraising experts. This is an Ariba webinar exclusively for the nonprofit community. We want to thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is David Jost. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer. I am here at Ariba. I also happen to be the moderator and co-host with Barbara today and with our special guest, who we'll introduce in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and just move forward to a little bit of what's going to be happening today, so you have an idea, but I'm not going to read it verbatim. We're going to give you the more formal welcome and introductions. We're going to hear from you. We are going to be talking. Yes, we're going to say it. It's one of those things you don't want to whisper. There is inflation. There are some economic challenges. We're going to talk about them and the impact they're having, but we're going to move very quickly and fast forward to how you can exceed your goals even during these times, with some really great advice, conversation, and input from you. And we're also going to have ample opportunity at the end, hopefully for questions and answers, as well as throughout. I just want to remind our hosts to please unmute yourself if you're muted, our co-hosts, and so because we'll be turning to you in just a moment, and welcome everyone who's here as we move to a welcome of those who are presenting today in conjunction with me. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and let you know that we have a very special guest who's joined us today, a friend here of Ariba, part of Ariba, Meistersoft and Ariba company, but more importantly to today's conversation, Ken Cleve, who is a fundraising, auction, and event expert and co-president and CEO of Meistersoft with a good number of years of experience. I always feel that's probably a more comfortable way to say it, but he's been doing this for quite some time. Welcome, Ken.
Hey, thank you, David. It's nice to be here with everyone, and looking forward to sharing information and also answering questions that you have.
Great. And I want to, as I said, I'm David Jost. I'm Chief Marketing Officer and moderator, co-host with Barbara. And Barbara O'Reilly, CFRE, is I think it's selling a shirt to just say fundraising expert. She's the principal and founder of Windmill Hill Consulting. She has nearly 30 years of annual fund, major gifts, campaign fundraising experience at major nonprofit organizations, including Harvard University, you may have heard of it, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, Oxford University in England, and the American Red Cross. Her consulting firm, which we'll talk a little bit about at the end here, Windmill Hill Consulting, is doing a phenomenal job of helping nonprofit organizations of all sizes cut through the noise and develop a profitable fundraising strategy that focuses on the resources, skills, and tactics they need to build more effective donor relationships and catapult their revenue. She serves as an immediate past president of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, AFP, in Washington, D.C. metro area, and is a former member of the advisory panel for Rogare, the fundraising think tank in the UK. I think I heard you chuckle, Barbara. I always pause when I come at that one. She is a frequent guest presenter at national and international conferences and on various webinars hosted by AFP, lots of other nonprofit organizations. And she's very important in the conversation here, been a good partner and friend of Ariba, having been on multiple webinars for the nonprofit community that we have presented together. Welcome, Barbara. Would you like to say a quick hello, and then we'll kind of anything you'd like to share with folks as we get started today.
Thanks, David. I'm delighted to be here and excited also to partner with Ken on this conversation.
Terrific. We're going to go ahead and just kind of move forward here to what's really important for the success, and I think the overall enjoyment of today's session, and that is that this is an interactive webinar. It really is. We want to hear from you. So even now, we've had a lot of people tell us where they're joining from, but we want you throughout today's session to go to the question box or the chat box. We're not picky. However you get the message to us, we will see it and make sure that we include that in our conversation or in how we adjust today's flow, because it's very adjustable and very real time. But we want you to share your questions, your insights, and your comments throughout. There's often, almost every time we do this, Barbara, I think you would agree, there's a side conversation going on that's like a whole nother show, right? And it's wonderful. Everyone's really contributing and helping everyone out. So we're going to begin by just starting with a little bit of a poll to get your interactive muscles flexed. And I'm just going to go ahead and launch this. You will see it up here in just a moment. You should be seeing that now. And it's basically, tell us about how inflation and really just economic challenges overall. We've been a couple of years, a lot of things that are sort of systemic and I think part of the landscape of impacting all of us. But what are the things that you've seen in terms of impact? Have you seen increased demand for services? Have you seen higher operating costs? Staff members and supporters personally impacted. Obviously, is that something that you're seeing as a pretty important part of the impact? And I guess I'm just going to call this out because it's the reason for us doing this session, really. Do you have reluctance or difficulty in asking for donations during these times? Are you in a sense pausing your fundraising because you think that it just might not, it might be tone deaf? We've seen no impact from inflation or the economy. Go ahead and respond. That we'd love to hear about that too. See if there's something happening there. And then lastly, for those of us who are just so overwhelmed that we don't really want to talk about, I've allowed you the option to answer. Don't even ask. I don't know where to begin. So you have the option to choose that and others, but please go ahead and let us know, how you're feeling today, because we want to make sure we map that to the things that are pretty relevant. We think we've hit quite a few of them, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a 5 count backwards to let you finish. If you haven't answered yet, just about everyone's responded. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to end the poll, and then I'm going to go ahead and display this so that you can see it. And Barbara and Ken, feel free to, talk about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised to see the higher operating costs. I'm not surprised to see a high percentage of staff members and supporters who are personally impacted. I'm curious that the percentage of those who responded is so low, who have reluctance or difficulty in asking for donations. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm delighted that it's as low as it is. But oftentimes, as we hit these economic uncertainties, whether it's inflation or a recession, often that number would be higher. So I'm hoping that number stays as low for our attendees today.
No, that's a great point. And it's very nearly a third of those answering, but and there's always some who wants to say we're reluctant to ask. I mean, that's what we all do, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that we want to not just talk about are you reluctant to ask, but do you know lots of different ways to ask and how to be able to ask in a way that doesn't overwhelm? And what's the finesse? What are the finer points that you add there? Anything to relate to there, Ken?
One of the things I think that later on in the presentation, we'll probably say this several times. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I mean, we're in this space for a reason. To further our mission. We afraid, even though it's impacting us, doesn't mean it's impacting everyone the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and move us, forward to another interactive exercise, and this one's ongoing. But I would like you all to just take a moment and just let us know, what questions do you have about fundraising or doing what you do? Donor relations, events, everything. Do you have about how to do that during inflation and a challenging economy? Free flow it. Throw anything in there you'd like to hear about. Challenge us a bit. We'll kind of take a look at those and respond to those as we move forward as well. So I'm going to go ahead and move us on to a little bit of I wouldn't say it's taboo subject like some things that you kind of whisper, but I think there's a little bit of a notion of maybe not wanting to necessarily bring it up and just plow through. But I think an important thing to do, and we've talked about this, is to really understand that the reality is inflation is hitting everyone especially hard these days, and nonprofits are being hit particularly hard, especially on top of the recent pandemic, other challenges, et cetera, right? So as you saw, I'm not going to reiterate this, but the evidence, kind of the research out there supports that as well. Fully a third of nonprofit leaders surveyed said they were reporting higher operating costs, and that was earlier in the year. 53% are reporting increased demand for services. Small minority only are reporting that they actually have 12 months or more of liquidity, which is a little bit, unnerving, right? And I think that at that point, we want to look at that and say, that's a very important thing to be thinking about. And I think what it all comes down to is this is a caring community. We're compassionate. we are very attuned to the fact that our staff members and our supporters are impacted personally. What that means to them from the perspective of as human beings, but also what it means to your organization in terms of ability to retain staff members, attract staff members, be able to get the things done you need to do, right? Anything related to that impact, that we did not hit so far, Barbara, Ken, feel free to chime in, but I'm gonna just kind of move us forward to away from the cloud, away from the, from the depressing, where I'm probably saying, okay, I just want to go under a rock, right? And you might say, well, why even, we should maybe pause our fundraising. Reluctance is really that, isn't it? It's pausing your fundraising. So I'm going to turn it over to Barbara to kind of carry us through here, and Ken as well, to kind of just talk about the topic of why you shouldn't pause your fundraising during these or any challenging economic times.
Yeah, so I would say that, fundraising, as we all know, is not something that you flick a switch and you turn on and off when it's convenient or when you have time to do it. And in fact, in probably every instance, in all instances of organizations that have become mega brands, they were intentional about that consistency of fundraising over time. So that they can continue to grow and build and scale in ways that we know them now. And what do they say about forming new habits? That it's consistency is the biggest driver for forming new habits. So just from that perspective, fundraising has to continue in some way, shape, or form. Now, our immediate reaction when we hit economic uncertainties, whether it was the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020, or fall of 2021, when we thought we were out of the clear and then we weren't. I've been in organizations during other recessions, and we were in the middle of a campaign at one organization when all of the asks that we had planned and were doing had to stop. But that didn't mean we stopped our fundraising completely. We just readjusted. So we have to remind ourselves that donors, they might be affected, and they will be affected in some way, but they also believe in your organization. So we've got to give them the space to make that decision whether or not they want to continue to give. And Una Osili, who is one of the leading research experts at the Lilly School of Philanthropy, had once said in a presentation that inflation is the one economic factor that does seem to impact in a negative way fundraising. However, recessions don't, which is actually probably, Una says it, so it's true, but because I think a lot of her expertise, but we have to keep that fundraising going. We have to acknowledge that our donors, yes, they're going to probably be giving more careful consideration to their fundraising, to their giving this year, but it doesn't mean that you don't ask, you don't assume that they are not going to support you.
Yeah.
And you want to give them that space to continue to invest in the things that are important to them, which is, if they've been supporting your organization, it will likely be that. It may not be the same gift, but as long as they continue to give, we want to focus also on that retention, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, I love this. Someone just said, don't make the decision for your donors. And, that's a wonderful comment. Ken, I see this third point. I know you always are sharing this in other places. I think we all, or some of us were, I know Barbara, you and I, about a year ago, we were doing don't let the Delta variant pause your fundraising. And it's interesting because I've heard from so many people that we've worked with and that or even that just joined us about how that advice really, it made a difference. They kept going and did something, right? And,
that's right. If you don't ask, as an organization, if you don't ask, your donors will presume that everything is going okay, and that you don't need them anymore. And we know that even when we're thick with funds, we still need them. We still need to engage with them. So don't be silent with your donors. And now's a really good opportunity, as Barbara will talk later on the presentation. I'll bring up. Now's a really good opportunity to bring on new donors who might be donating to an organization that isn't reaching out to them, who isn't thanking them in the right way. So we can cast your net a little bit wider and help you even bring on some additional donors during.
That's an interesting tack, really. I mean, in the sense, because this point that, you know, they may be donating to fewer causes, you know, you can sort of change the prominence of your cause. You know, someone else's decision to pause maybe allows someone to pivot a different direction. It's the first time I've said pivot since the pandemic started to slow, but I don't know, I guess it's always there. I'm going to tell you that. So if we're not pausing, what are we doing? We're hitting play, you know, but we're also fast forwarding. I mean, you really have to, like, you know, go at it full on, right? That's going to mean different things for different folks, but you know, those that ask and that really level up their fundraising. So there's sort of this thing, as you were talking, Barbara, I thought, you know, the thing that Lily had mentioned where she's saying that, you know, that people during inflation, it really impacts fundraising. And I always look at this and I don't know what movie reference to make, but it's sort of that place like, is the future determined? You know, do you have the ability to change it? Is this already right? And I think that a lot of times, and we put a lot of this stuff out there too, a lot of research, it's talking about, given the state, you know, given that we're in stasis and we have no momentum, movement going forward can really have a lot of say in how things actually turn out for you. And that's an important point here. So, you know, there's some things that are working particularly well right now. And, you know, Ken, if you want to maybe start to walk us through those, and Barbara chime in as well, that would be great.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Back to the phrase of don't be afraid to ask. For at least in our space, in the event fundraising specific space, we probably helped a lot of you that were on this call with a virtual or a hybrid event when the pandemic was going on. What we have seen across the country since the beginning of the year is a transition to in-room events. Donors are, poor choice of words here, but the donors are starving for the opportunity to be around other like-minded people in a face-to-face environment. And with the pandemic over, we have the opportunity to get into a room with people, whether it's 50 or 5,000. People are more generous when they are together, and they're excited to do that. So David has used the phrase, live is alive, and it truly is. And that's something to give consideration to. Planning for an in-person event is challenging. It's time-consuming, but it is well worth it, and we're seeing the amount of returns and yields to be as high as they were pre-pandemic.
We're going to the very top point is going to be a nice segue to this next section, that Barbara is going to be taking us through on the fundamentals. It's kind of like back to this is a football, get your game right? And kind of looking at that. But I'll just tell you that, and these are not individual, like we're going to unpack all of these, are going to be themes. So there's sort of this notion that a lot of what you know isn't necessarily going to be, you know, innovation isn't always brand new. It's new to you, or it's discovering things you've done and doing them right. So sound strategy, planning, and execution are always in style. We're going to talk about the giving season, year-end, and year-round fundraising. When we talk about it, we'll move that hyphen a little bit closer to year. I don't know what happened there, Ken, sorry. And so we're going to talk about digital mobile fundraising, of course, in a sense of what the approach is, but how do you make it easy to give more and to give more in lots of different ways? How do you use some of these other strategies that we talked about? And, you know, who do you partner with? So, you know, Barbara, I'm going to turn it to you to kind of carry us to the next piece here on that first point, though, because that's the essence of everything we're talking about today.
Yeah, and I want to just pick up on something that Ken had mentioned about live events. And I completely agree. I think there is, those organizations that have gone back to doing some sort of live event have really been seeing great returns. However, donors are also now very used to doing virtual stuff. And so whether it's virtual meetings with development staff or nonprofit executive leaders, or attending some sort of event virtually. So I think that point around the last point, or second to last point about hybrid, is something that we want to be always thinking about.
Yeah.
who wants to have we've all gotten used to not having to travel and find parking and do all the stuff that we used to do when everything was only in person. So part of the innovation point that you mentioned, David, is not just necessarily doing new things, but learning from what worked and didn't work and iterating off of that. So really thinking about over the last couple of years, where were we as fundraisers able to really deepen relationships with organizations and bring it to a different level? And how do we carry that forward in this new world order that we're finding ourselves in?
Absolutely, great point. So we're going to move forward to talking about, not only are the fundamentals important, let's just go ahead and say they're more important than ever.
Sure.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so these are, hopefully everyone who's joining us today is well on their way with their year-end planning, with their copy, their timelines, their scheduling, their print production, and so forth, getting their boards activated. But these are some tips that are good for both year-end and just throughout the year. But since we're really at the precipice of going full gas on the foot on the gas pedal and zooming into the end of the year, really think about in your appeals, whether they're electronic or print, how can we be most strategic and personal? This idea of, and this is a default for electronic communications like emails, for example, where we think, okay, we've got X number of names on our mailing list, we're just going to email everybody to make a gift. Well, the reality is that the percentage of emails that are now opened nowadays is going down, is declining pretty quickly. All of our inboxes are completely overwhelmed. And we know that being more strategic in our segmentation and being more personal really goes a long way. So think about what are those segments, and we'll talk about this on the next slide. Think about bringing in what we know work well from neuroscience and from our for-profit colleagues who do this all the time in their sales around anchoring and social proof. So anchoring is something where when you give a gift array, you start with something that is the highest amount. So that's the anchor. And the donor might say, I can't give that amount. Oh, but that other amount I can give. So it helps the donors and helps all of our brains, which are always looking for shortcuts, to make those decisions quickly about how much to give. Social proof is using language like donors like you or others have been giving at this level. We often see this on printed pledge forms. We often see this on donation pages that might have a little handwritten circle that pops up on the donation form that says average gift of our donors is this amount. Again, it helps us to feel like others, we're going to be like others, right? And again, we're anchored, our brains are hardwired for that social proof. Specific asks, donors want to know, how can I be most helpful? Where do you want me to make my gift? How do you want me to make my gift? How much? So don't make it a guessing game for them. And especially if they are returning donors, if they've been giving to you year over year, try to be as clear as you can and remind them how much they gave previously. They are not going to remember what gift they made November of 2021. So put it in the note or in the email saying your gift of $500 last year was so important to do this, this, and this. Would you consider another gift of that amount or an increase or whatever? But make it as specific and as easy for them to decide whether they're going to support your organization. And think about that multi-channel. We, again, often default to electronic communications because it's cheap or free for many, and it's easy. It's easy to do. We don't have to worry about getting into a print production queue. So, but we know from some studies that multi-channel is definitely going to be the way to go. It is much more effective. We always
I'm sorry, Barbara. I would just say I'm looking at digital only leaves money on the table, and from a company that does digital, does lots of other things too. I go, yes, and also only doing staying in one lane on the digital.
Of course.
You got so many different devices, right? I've
Yes.
got 7 of them open right now. I'm not going to tell what they are, but they're all open.
Right, but our donors are in all of those places. And so we want to make sure we're meeting our donors where they are. We always want to be thinking about how do we learn from what happened at the end of the year so that we can include the right stewardship, we can include the right touch points for those who gave and didn't give. And absolutely front and center, donor retention has to be driving all of your communications, because if we are losing our donors, then we're just perpetuating that churn.
Yeah, and I'm going to remind everyone as I transition forward to the next slide, be sure to keep asking questions. I am seeing your questions, your comments, and some of them they're being answered. We're going to come back to them, but any insights, any thoughts, and even just sharing the kinds of things you've done that reinforce these points. I think to your point, donors like you, nonprofits like you, right, are doing this. So let's all sort of leverage that good advice.
So there are a lot of different ways that you can segment, and whether you are using AI tools that can help you to really discern those segments within your audience that are more likely to upgrade to certain levels, or are the ones that are most likely to be one and dones, and a whole variety of different segmentation options. If your systems are not that capable, or if you don't have the staff bandwidth to do all of those more sophisticated segmentations, the great starting point is just understanding who gave last year but not yet this year. And again, because we are living and breathing our organizations all the time, we assume all of our donors are too, but we're just like we're all busy, they're all busy. So just remind them that this is why their gift has been so important to your organization, and invite them to make another gift. Those new donors, absolutely, we've got to be focusing on them. And so for current and new donors, this is where I see organizations say, well, they've already made their gift this year, we're not going to solicit them again. But in fact, current and new donors might want to make another gift if they're asked. Monthly donors, I often see organizations say they're already giving, we're not going to bother them. Sometimes I hear we're not going to remind them that they're making that monthly gift because they might cancel it. That's the wrong mindset. So monthly donors do want to know, has my gift been helping? You needed some additional support. What other ways can I make a gift? And they are often ones who will consider an out of the typical timeline solicitation. So absolutely think creatively about those donors. And those who have not been giving, typically we don't see high success rate by reactivating donors who haven't given for more than 2 years. Usually even 2 years, that 2-year mark, it's like 5% or below, but it's still worth reaching out to them with a, hey, we miss you. Let me tell you all the things that we've been able to do because of past donors like you. We know during the early days of the pandemic that there was some pretty surprising reactivation rates from donors who had been longer lapsed and had come back to support organizations that they had previously given to. So let's not completely rule them out, but let's also think about how we personalize that communication so that they still feel like they're part of your family. And so at the end of the day, as Penelope Burke said in her book, Donor-Centered Fundraising, and she really coined that phrase about 20 years ago. If you aren't familiar with Penelope, I definitely recommend you look for her book. That she's done a 2.0 version of this within the last, I think, 3 years or so. And she has studied for the last 2 decades donor motivations. She's learned a lot about what is important to donors, what drives them and what doesn't. And what she said in one of the chapters of her book was that fundraising underperformance is a failure to communicate. So when donors don't know that they're valued, when they don't know how they can be helpful, when they don't know where things are with your organization, particularly in these uncertain times, they aren't going to step up in the ways that we would like them to. They're not mind readers. So we really want to be thinking about looking at our numbers and seeing what are our retention rates like, what are our return towards our goal like, are we not hitting those goals? And if so, how do we change that donor experience so that we can start to engage them more successfully?
I love this quote because, when you see it, I'm thinking, oh, that's sort of often said about relationships as well. And then I thought of another quote, and I don't have it verbatim, but it's something along the lines of fundraising isn't an action, it's a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it makes good sense.
Mm-hmm. So about that multi-channel study, so back in at the end of 2020, the team at Next After did a little experiment, and they do tons of experiments on all different kinds of digital fundraising, especially and email marketing and so forth. And they did this study about multi-channel communications, and what they found was that those donors who were communicated with offline, so in print pieces and digitally, email generally, or other ways, that the ones who were communicated with in both ways, online and offline, were 3 times more generous and actually 2 times more likely to be retained. So again, it draws on the fact that our donors, as all of us, our donors are we're competing for their attention, and they're going to be focused everywhere, right? In their emails and in their social platforms and print and family and in-person stuff and all of that. If we can meet them where they are in multiple ways, our likelihood to engage them, to encourage their gifts, and to keep them is going to be higher if it's multi-channel. And we also know that generally direct mail with email, in another study I saw, lifted the response rate by about 30%. So even that, by itself, increased the response rate. And we're seeing in this study, increase the average gift, it increased the retention. So as you are, fighting the good fight of trying to encourage your leadership to carve out a budget for print, for direct mail, show them this, because you are definitely going to be leaving money on the table if you only keep to digital communications.
Barbara, in previous years, I was in advertising and marketing. I'm still in advertising and marketing, just in a great space here. But there was something when I was with television advertising, they called it roadblocking,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really just making sure that you're running your campaigns across all the different channels. So back in the day, when you would turn the knob, you would turn from one channel to the next, and you keep seeing the same commercial.
Yep.
It takes a while. It takes some frequency for people to get the message.
Yep, 100%. And I
Barbara,
see that.
Sorry. I did have a question for you, actually, that may benefit the attendees. What is your opinion of utilizing a board as an extension of the fundraising staff within an organization? What I mean by that is not just a peer-to-peer or a team fundraising sort of thing, but picking up the phone and making the request directly.
100%. That's a whole session unto itself, but and I will stay off my soapbox, but that is 100% a great way to engage your board. That is when I do board trainings, I tell them that there are 2 non-negotiables to their jobs with regard to fundraising. It's A, that they've got to make their own gift, and B, that they have to be good stewards, which means doing thank you calls, thank you notes, doing some sort of outreach. Now, that said, we've got to make it super turnkey and easy for them. So giving them scripts, telling them who you would like them to donate, to call, showing them the research that demonstrates that their outreach will improve donor retention, and will improve likelihood that donors will make increased gifts. So I would say absolutely encourage them to do at least thank you calls and thank you notes to start. And then I also see Susan just had asked, do we send an email before or after the direct mail? And I would recommend both. I often find sending an email like a week or 2 before the direct mail drops is a nice primer to receiving the direct mail. It doesn't have to be a direct ask. It could be a really nice stewardship piece or a feel-good story or a video that will get the donor's attention and will remind them of the impact that their gift has made. Then it's followed with the direct mail piece, and then probably a couple weeks after doing another email. Now that's having a whole series of emails throughout the end of the year is pretty standard, but I would say particularly around when that direct mail piece drops, ensuring that there is some touch points that are digital to tie it all together. And usually it's a better practice to have that story linked. So some reference perhaps in one of the appeals to the same story that you're going to share in the other pieces is important. So we also then, we're focused nose down into end of year planning, but when we are thinking about 2023, when we've crossed the threshold of December 31st, we, turn the calendar page to 2023, we breathe a sigh of relief, and then we say, okay, now what? Now, for those of you who will begin a new fiscal year, that's if you haven't already developed your development plan for the year, that's one of the first things, of course, you're going to want to do. But an important starting point, whether you're starting a new fiscal year or sort of somewhere in the middle of that fiscal year, you want to look at what worked and didn't work. So for the year-end campaign, because 30% of all gifts come in December. So this is a busy season, whether we realize it or not, just even on our own orbits. So think about things like, what was the stewardship experience like? Did we thank them quickly? Or are we slow to get those gift acknowledgements out? Let's not also assume that an email thank you is enough. So really understanding, where can we add a little bit more personalization so that donor feels seen? How did those donors make their gifts? Is it different in terms of amounts, in terms of average gifts, in terms of the number of donors, in terms of the vehicle through which they made their gifts? Is it different in this year than in previous years? So you can run those reports from your CRM. Who didn't renew? This is especially if we're facing the eye of the hurricane of inflation right now, and starting to look ahead to a recession, which Jamie Dimon at Morgan Stanley has predicted will start probably in February or March. This is the time when we really want to be looking at who didn't give, and maybe reach out to them. Were they longtime donors that didn't make a gift for the first time this year? Good reason to find out why. Or there are other donors that that churn for some reason. Sending them a little survey or sending them a little note that still says thank you to them is important. Those first-time donors, absolutely, we got to front end the stewardship and the gratitude for them, because they often are the ones who are going to go first. So the Giving USA report that comes out every June looks at national trends of giving, and it looks at the previous previous calendar year. And historically, it will show sort of the average, what we believe are the estimated contributions in these waves. And what we see pretty consistently, although these numbers have changed a little bit, certainly from 2020, which was looking at 2019, yes, the numbers are going up for sure. I think it was 487 billion or 484 billion, which once again set a new record. But we know that the number of donors is decreasing. We know that the percentage of individuals has decreased a smidge. It's at 67%. But when we factor in bequests, which is of course made by individuals, and about half of that foundation number, because it's from family foundations, they're still in the high 80s, almost 90%. So when we are thinking about our own development planning, we really want to factor in where to best focus our limited time. And individuals is what we are seeing as a national trend pretty consistently. Corporations, interestingly, so this number has decreased. The amount that they gave in 2021 was an increase by, I think, about 10% or something from over the previous year. but the percentage of the total has decreased by about a percentage point. So the number, so this is not going to be consistently a point, any area that we should be focusing a lot of time on, because interestingly, bequest, right, that's double what the amount is given by corporations. So as we are thinking ahead, although we're focused on year end, as we look ahead, if you don't have a planned giving program or some way where you're promoting bequest intentions, this is the time to be doing it, because we know that that amount has been going up, and the great wealth transfer is happening, and we want to be sure that we are offering ways for donors to leave their legacy gift to the causes that are important to them now.
So I know, Ken, a lot of times one area, just sort of a different, take on it as well in terms of corporations related to what you're doing.
Yeah, pardon me. Thank you, David. One of the things that we see that works well, it was the corporate sponsorships and the visibility that those corporations get from being visible to the attendees at fundraising events. It's typically the audience they're trying to seek in with their general marketing dollars. So a dollar spent at a fundraising event where the average net worth of an individual is much higher than someone who's driving down the highway looking at a billboard allows me as a business owner to want to sponsor your event. One of the other things that works well is corporate tables, but you have to be careful with corporate tables because we want them to bring bidders, not eaters. What I mean by that is oftentimes you have a table of 10 and you have a couple of corporate sponsors and they each get a table of 10 and they'll send a junior member, let's say it's a law firm, they'll send a junior member and they'll say, hey, invite some people and a couple of clients and fill the table for us. It's really important with the messaging that they understand that with this corporate table comes responsibility. Your responsibility is to bring people to be exposed to our organization who will understand and appreciate our mission, and ultimately you want to treat your in-person event as a method of cultivating major donors over time, which is something I'll touch on a little bit in my section.
So I feel like this is one of my personal soapboxes that I need to keep saying loudly and more loudly, because we haven't moved the needle in changing this in the sector. On average, according to the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, donor retention is about 43%. And there was a study that a comparison I was just talking to a colleague about, and I think the hospitality industry is at like 75%. And we are of all of the other for-profit and retail loyalty percentages, we're the lowest. So often this would be a bellwether for a company going closing. And yet the nonprofit sector thrives in lots of other ways, despite the fact that we are not keeping our donors in record numbers. So we do want to focus on our own organization's retention. Are we able to keep the donors who have said, I believe in your work and I'd like to continue, I'd like to support you? Because if we lose sight of that number and are only ever focusing on our revenue goals, we are perpetuating churn and we are wasting precious time that I know many people on this call are wearing multiple hats, and we're wasting time if we're not focusing on keeping those donors. And those first-time donors that I referenced earlier, only on average 20% of them are sticking around. Again, because they're testing the waters. They're seeing, is this an organization that really values me? And I don't mean pulling out the red carpet and giving them all sorts of special attention, but genuine gratitude, genuine thank yous, giving them valuable information that shows the importance of all gifts to the work that they're doing. And we fail often.
It's back to your point on communication, right? I mean, we've talked about thank you not being enough. It's not that it's not important. It's that sometimes it's not just saying the words thank you. It's but you don't show me that you appreciate me, right? And I think that as we're looking at donor retention, another important point when you're talking about economic challenges and inflation and higher costs is that it costs, and it varies who you talk to, but 4 times as much to retain a donor as it does to acquire a new donor. So, let's step into our common sense corner and say this makes sense for that reason as well. Yeah. So we're going to, again, kind of, it's one of those things where it's sort of like, there's a little bit of a duh factor. It's like things are costing more, demand is greater, we need more money. So what should we do? And the answer sort of becomes, well, you need to raise more money, right? So that what brings us to this then is that, so what are those things that we really need to be thinking about? They're not everything that we've ever heard, but they're a lot of the things. And some of it boils down to making it easy for donors to give, and to give more in multiple ways, so that you're getting more from everything, that every interaction that you have wherever possible, with best practice ways of doing things through a lot of things that we're going to talk about. So, one of those things that I want to just put out, and this is not a Giving Tuesday or even a Giving Season, webinar, but we do want to talk about it because it's coming up very quickly. And also there's this overarching thing that one of the things that you want to be doing is taking advantage of. You're trying to raise more money. It's the most wonderful time of the year. So how do you leverage that? Thoughts, Barbara, Ken?
Yeah, so Giving Tuesday has proven over the last 10 years or so that it is a powerful phenomenon that really catalyzes and inspires donors to give in lots of different ways. But it's not an exercise that exists in isolation. So it requires planning, and it requires an organization to have a general cadence of communications already that can lead up to that Giving Tuesday promotion. One study I saw referenced that that Giving Tuesday donors are typically donors to the organization that they support on that day anyway. So that's one data point. But it's not something that is, I've long been a skeptic and a critic of Giving Tuesday, but I've come around. I've rethought my perspectives on the day because I see how powerful it is. And so it could be a nice way to use it to thank your donors. You might manage your expectations, and if you decide that you want to do some sort of communications that day and promote your nonprofit, use it to but manage your expectations that it's not going to start raining money just because you put out a couple posts. So it's also okay to not participate on the day. And I think where my previous skepticism always came into play was because I saw so many organizations who were like, I've got this pressure from my ED or my CEO and my board to do something. We don't have the bandwidth. It's going to take all of these things. And then they come back and say, but we only raised a couple $1,000. And, and so then there's sort of those mismanaged expectations. So I would say it's okay if you decide not to do it, but if you do decide to do it, manage what is reasonable for your bandwidth, and also ensure that you're building in the time that you need to plan it well.
We just put out a guide on Giving Tuesday, like everyone in the world, right? I don't think there's a lot of great info in there. Yeah. But we purposefully talk, and a lot of our leaders talk about, the whole notion, don't just do it because everyone's doing it. Yeah. And be sure you understand what your outcomes are. Do you want to bring in new donors? Do you want to bring in, do you want to bring in money? Do you want to bring in young donors? Do you want, what are the things you're trying to do and set an expectation? But we also talk about it in the sense that don't just think about this as Giving Tuesday. It's purposefully worded as, think about this season. Yeah. And I can't see everyone's face right now. I can see hands if you virtually raise them, but you don't need to. I know the answer already. How many of you have spent more than you wanted to? Let's not say overspent, spent more than you wanted to out of generosity during the holidays? Mm-hmm. Can get those hands up. Okay. All right. It isn't that someone, if they have the wherewithal to give, they're inclined. This is the time to be able to tell your story. And someone asks, how do we adjust that year-end approach? It's the same kind of thinking that you want to tell your story well. You want to make a compelling case for support, and you don't want to just fundraise and say, hey, it's Giving Tuesday. you still want to get to the fundamentals of telling what this is going to mean, what's going to be the impact.
And let the data inform your decisions. So if you can analyze how much have you raised in previous Giving Tuesday campaigns, and is it worth that effort? If it's a couple $1,000s and from very few donors, you could probably raise more with more personal outreach by maybe asking those board members to call those donors who haven't yet made their gift, or those inactive donors who might be inspired to give back. And so there are other ways that you might raise more money without all the stress of feeling like you've got to, get into the Giving Tuesday campaigns.
Phenomenon. Yeah, I really want to give Ken time on the live auction of some of the events, because this is an interesting thing. Your brain might say, well, people don't want to spend money and take time and go out and do that. There's a different story there. But before I do that, I'm going to gain us some time and kind of walk through a couple of these like best practices that are really important to be thinking about year round. So they almost all apply. I think all of them actually do apply to the giving season, right? But there are things you want to be doing because you need to be doing this throughout the year so that people know you're around, you need help. You don't want people giving and just giving during the giving season, and then you're sitting there swimming for funds, paddling for funds, I should say, in the middle of the year. So make sure you have lots of ways to tell your story through making sure that you're online. But recurring giving is a great strategy. Setting up campaigns, particularly in these times, if you can give $20 a month, or $22 a month for 2022, and you can set up a campaign that enables that. Recurring givers or monthly donors, I'm sorry, I'm hungry. Monthly donors, as they're sometimes called, are shown to give something like 5 times as more annually, and to have much greater retention. Obviously, they're bound to you, right? Over the course of a year than a one-time donor. And tribute giving, people are going to give more in honor of somebody or in memory of someone, just because there it is, and they're moved emotionally, and they're going to want to make sure they do that. And it gives people another way to give. Matching giving, it's a big part of your strategies for Giving Tuesday. It's a big thing in terms of just someone, the numbers that are oftentimes thrown out, like 84% of people would be more inclined to give if they knew there was a matching gift. They want to give, and they're saying, well, I don't want to give my 25, but if I could give 50, that's terrific, right? So they're going to do that. And then also, they're going to be inclined to give more when that happens. So, well, since it's being matched, I'd rather do 50 and get to 100. So those are important things. Raise assist is something we talk about a lot here. Cover the processing fees. If you have fees of whatever percent they are, or other things you want to sort of build into that donation, again, research will show that 85 to 90% of people will leave the box checked when you say, would you like to cover the processing fees? Because why wouldn't they want the most to go to your cause? That alone could increase your yield by 2, 3, 4%, whatever that is. Making sure things can be done through a phone, being able to have people come to events and register, which Ken will be talking about, but then leveraging the power, the networking effect, if you will, of being able to get to the friends and family and networks, professional and personal people, to be able to leverage teams, and then to sort of play off of Penelope Burke's, donor-centered, talking about donor-centric websites. If someone comes to your website to do something, allow them to do all kinds of things to support you very easily. Prominent donate now button, find out what events you have, learn about where this is going, seeing the impact. And then this is my segue, and I don't want to take away from this. I'm just going to, as I segue, if you guys want to chime in on any of these, but then we'll turn to Ken talking about Live is Alive and why. You guys good?
Yeah,
Good.
I'm okay,
Okay.
transitioning unless there are any
Perfect.
questions from the audience. So thank you for the very smooth transition. One of the things that touches back onto what Barbara is sharing with all of us is a point that I want to make, is that regardless of the financial situation and how we perceive it personally and how we are personally affected by it, donors still make donations. They just donate to fewer causes, and you cannot assume that your organization is the one that they're thinking about. So you must go out, you must ask them to participate. You have to request those donations. And the multi-channel approach that Barbara had mentioned that is utilized in conversations in our space, one of those channels is a live event. There was a comment earlier that I missed it, but I'll get back to it. Someone asked about, what do you think about doing a friend-raising sort of event. That ties in with live events in general, whether it's a live auction gala, golf fundraiser, or anything else that might fit your mission. Might fit your mission well. Over the last couple of years, we have seen the people that have transitioned from the virtual and the hybrid back into live in-room events. Their yields have increased, and they've raised more money than they have even pre-pandemic. To Barbara's point, we should take from the pandemic some things that we learned and things that went well, and that is expanding the room. Let's say, for example, that you are considering a live auction, or you've been in this business as long as I have, and this next year will be your 35th anniversary event. You're probably limited on the amount of people you can fit into the room. Let's say, for example, that you live in a major metropolitan area and you have a convention center. They can open up the walls and you can fit 1,000 people in there. That might not be the right size for you, but let's say, for example, that you can fit 250 or 500 people in the room. You still have donors that wish to participate, but they just might be in other places in the country, or they might be traveling. Some of you on the call have probably been in organizations that are the size that, oh my goodness, our major donor is on vacation. We have to change the date of our event. Right, we've all been there, but you don't need to do that anymore. You can employ different services. Mobile bidding, as an example, expands the room. It allows people to participate even if they're not in the room. And there's some detailed information I can share with individuals that are interested in that on how you should do that, the right way to do that. Because you don't want to incentivize people to stay home. You really do want them to be in the room looking across the table when you do we call it fund the mission or fund the need or the appeal. Someone comes up on the stage, they talk about your mission, maybe they're a recipient of your services. It's the emotional appeal of the event, and you have a professional auctioneer. I can talk, that could be an entirely different session. If you're using a volunteer auctioneer, I'm sure they are a wonderful person, but if they are not a professional charity auctioneer, you are absolutely leaving money in the room. And I'm happy to sidebar on that after this call as well and explain to you some of the things to ask. But what you do is you have them come up, they make their appeal, and they start you start your ask at, let's say, for example, you know that you have a major donor in the room that's willing to donate $25,000. You start there, and then they ask if anyone will match. It is nearly impossible to do that via text or email. I'm not going to make a $25,000 donation unless I can look across the room at one of my counterparts or another person in there who is saying, yeah, I'm raising my bid card. I'm bidder 150. I'm raising my bid card at $25,000, and they look around the room and make eye contact with other people that they know have the ability to make that same donation.
Yeah.
You have to be face-to-face to make that happen. So what's working well in auctions, that as an example, the in-room events will actually get you more donations than a virtual event, as an example. But we have to go back to what worked, and to Barbara's point, let's incorporate some of the things that worked well in the pandemic. So let's maybe hybridize our event. It doesn't work well for everybody, but it does work well for those that do it the right way, and the right way is employing the right technology. You have to say thank you repeatedly. And one thing I will share before we wrap up here, because I'm bumping up against the end of time, is your attendees' last memory of your organization wasn't the speech, it wasn't the items that they won, it wasn't the presentation, it wasn't the people sitting at their table and how much fun they had, or the dance, or if you have music. It's when they check out. Their last impression of you and your organization is the checkout process, and you have to make sure that you're doing it well so that you're not thanking your donors by making them wait in a checkout line when they have to get home to let the sitter go home for the evening. So, yeah. And there's some detailed information I can share about that at a later time as well, but it's definitely something to give consideration to. The checkout is the most important thank you of the event.
So keep asking those questions and answers. We're going to be, taking just a quick turn here to just sort of do a real rapid fire through some of the technology and the partners, not so much from a Yeah, certainly not a sales pitch, letting you know what kinds of things are out there, whatever you're using that are an important part of this. You want to make sure you can do more with what you have and extend what you're doing and do it in the right way to reach people in what is even more of a digital, technology driven world. And it isn't the only thing. It's just something that's an expectation that comes along with it. I expect to have a virtual option for everything. I expect to have a digital option and online. How can I do that? So how do you leverage the right partner, someone that's going to be with you for good to be able to help you with all of these kinds of things. And, so we just share that, this is from Ariba's perspective, we've been working with the nonprofits for more than 30 years. We have, been able to raise all kinds of dollars and all kinds of great results for nonprofits across all sectors. And we, our software is built exclusively for the nonprofit industry. What we really advocate for, however you do this, is to have an all-in-one approach. You look at all the things that are kind of laid out here when you're fundraising and you're trying to raise more money during these times. Having everything siloed in multiple databases, in spreadsheets and manila folders makes it very difficult to be able to do some of the things that Barbara was asking you to do early on, which is to know your donors. Knowing your donors means you have to get everyone together and look in their trunk and figure out where all of the data is stored and bring it all together. But if you can pull up an easy live event report of last year, but not this year, kind of report and look at that on a real-time basis, that's very valuable. So we look at trying to solve that challenge with Exceed Further, which is our software. It's an all-in-one cloud-based digital fundraising, donor relationship management, healthcare, hospitality. We work with lots of organizations and Ronald McDonald House Charities with decades of experience working with them. And then also, as Ken mentioned, all these auction solutions. Just showing you there's a wide range here. We're going to provide everyone a free fundraising consultation and demo with folks like Ken and our team and people that are going to be committed to helping you throughout, and people within the whole Ariba team, that are going to help you on any of these areas. Not a sales pitch. It's not come in and look at everything. If you don't want to look at everything, understand what things are important to you. And even if you want to just say, I still am not sure I know what to do during inflation and economic challenges, or I heard a little bit about this, I'd like to know more. It can be 5 minutes, it can be an hour. It's been known to go longer if you want it to. So we have donor relationship management, talking about all the kinds of things you can see here, digital fundraising. We have the auction types of capabilities. We do work with hospitality organizations widely as well. And then everything we do is mobile responsive and everyone, again, raise your hand. You got a phone in it. You can't see I'm holding a phone. You got blip for a minute. It's with you all the time, for everyone. And I've got to make this point because I've been making it more and more on everything we do. Folks who say certain ages just aren't comfortable with technology. They don't do things. They don't use their phones. If that was, to the extent where that was ever true over the last couple of years, it is really hard to fathom, because if you had grandchildren and you wanted to talk to them, you got on the phone. If you had to figure out how to get on a Zoom webinar, never had heard of Zoom except for it being an old public television show, you needed to look at, how do I go ahead and connect to this and do it? So people are very comfortable, and not only comfortable, but have an expectation for this to be part of that conversation. So Ken, anything you want to point to here, just say this helps with this helps with that, from some of the things you talked about. I did see some questions come in real quickly.
Sure. I haven't looked at the questions, but the one thing I will mention is the hybridization of the events that we learned through the pandemic. You have a handful of people in the room, but you can expand the room, which is one of the phrases that I used. That's what the text to bid will do for you. There are many services out there. We are not the only one. You should definitely take a look around and see what's best for your organization, but it's certainly something for you to consider. If you do it well, it will absolutely help you raise more money.
Okay, and then as you can see here, there's an opportunity if you would like to even think about a fundraising consultation, let us know. But there's the services, as Ken had mentioned, be happy to talk with you or anyone on his team about, the auctioneers, the consulting, about the whole ball of wax. Lots of organizations doing things out there. Ken and his team really do everything within what you need to do to make it a success. So that's a great thing. We like to say here, we're with you for good. We're not following you around, but we're with you for good, to help you to achieve your causes. And if you want to sign up for that, go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and move us to what I think is a very important, piece here to share a little bit. And we're going to open it up to questions. And as we do that, I'm just going to say, if you want to, let me know if you want a fundraising consultation demo with the Ariba or Microsoft team, or even are thinking about it, let us know. And we'll put that up for just another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'll put it up again after we're done here. But I'm going to let you know right now as I'm doing this. I'm putting one up for if you would like to have updates and receive news and updates. In other words, just sort of be on the email kind of communications preference list with Barbara and her organization. She puts out great stuff. Every time I need it, it shows up, Barbara. So it's great stuff, and it's not overdone. It's the perfect mix. So she has. They do a lot of things working with nonprofits across the board. And I'm just going to make another plug. If you go to the ariba.com website and you go to our resources section, previous webinars that I've done with Barbara are there. One of them that Ken kind of asked a question about, I remember so well, it was why your board doesn't fundraise and how to change that. And it might have said how to change that now with an exclamation point. But it was so powerful, and it was so rich, and it was a bit of therapy. It was really good for the community. There's some out there on superpowers, on a lot of the great stuff about retention for fundraising and everything. But this is just great stuff. Barbara, you want to share anything else about what you do or what people can expect if they share their email with you?
Yeah, you've said it really well. We send out pieces throughout the month. Either we have a monthly newsletter, and then other announcements of webinars and other events that I'll be speaking at. And sometimes some other just points of inspiration that we want to share with the community outside of the newsletter. So we take the list privacy really seriously. So we do not spam you. We don't share lists. We really do look at this as how can we be in service of your fundraising.
Great. So I am, I'm going to thank you more formally as we get to the very end. If you can stay with us, please do, because we've now got some questions and comments and things of the sort that we'll close up with. I'm going to let you know that at the end of the deck, when you receive it, there's a whole host of things about the kinds of resources through Exceed Further that can help you do these things really, really well. So they're there for your reference. But again, I put up the ask if you want to have that conversation with us. And just learn more about what kinds of things you might do, or even just pose a question to us. We'd love to talk with you. I'm going to turn it over to some of the questions here to see if I know we've been answering them throughout. But one of the things I did see was, looking at that mix of where the giving is, and someone saying that I found across the organizations I've been in is that the majority comes from foundations and and grants, right? And then someone chimed in that side conversation again to say, well, that may be true, but for our organization, it's always the largest individuals. So when you look at that chart, your organization mix may be very, very different. But I guess it depends what types of industries you're in. Some are going to be very, very laden with grants and foundations. A lot of the things we've talked about are for that individual giving, but they're not exclusively that. I mean, awareness is awareness. But any thoughts on that question or the answers to it?
Yeah, I hear that almost every time that chart is shared from the Giving USA, and the reality is that has been an ongoing trend line in the Giving USA report for at least 20 years, as far as I can remember, at least. So it's been the individuals are giving are the predominant lion's share of the contributed revenue. That said, for every organization, yes, your own mix of revenue sources is going to be different. It may not be perfectly reflective of what we see on a national trend, but what you want to be answering for yourselves is what's our dependency quotient? So are we overly dependent on a certain number of donors or a certain type of donor? And how can we ensure that we are balancing our revenue so that we can mitigate continued economic uncertainties. So those organizations, as important as events are, those organizations that were 99% or 95% reliant on event fundraising in 2020 had to figure out really quickly how to rebuild the fundamentals. So really think about your own organization's weaknesses and areas that might cause some issues if and when the economy turns, because it will turn. Yeah. It's turning now.
I want to answer a question. Thank you, Barbara. I want to answer a question for someone that just asked, is Raise Assist a software platform? It's just sort of a coined phrase. It's actually much simpler than that. It's the whole notion of allowing people to cover the processing fees. And that's how we officially refer to it, cover the processing fees, which means when you have a donation page or someone has something in terms of an event, or somebody's doing something that has some sort of fee or donation made with it, you allow them to check, or you automatically check and allow them to uncheck depending on what you want to do. The second, by the way, is the best practice, most often recommended. But what you'll find is that people then it will very clearly say, there are some costs associated. If you'd like to have your donation cover this, it'll take your donation from 100% to 102-3%, depending on who you're working with. It could be much higher, obviously, and you can set it wherever you want to if you want to have it cover something else. But it's just that notion of saying there are some costs associated with what we do. We allow for that within our Microsoft, within our Ariba solutions, and the things that we do. So it's a best practice. So thank you for asking. Ken, I have a question that's kind of directed at you for auctions. Do donors generally tell you the full market value of the item they are providing for the tax letter you need to provide them?
Absolutely. So the fair market value is a requirement, and one of the things that I'll talk to our software very quickly is that once that fair market value is inserted, then the amount that is paid over that fair market value is the potential tax deduction. So the donor, of course, will want to tell you exactly what that fair market value is, because for their own taxes, they're going to want to claim that as a donation to your organization.
Great. It's interesting. I'm looking through these too, and I want to tell everyone, thank you all for joining us, because the people I'm seeing who've joined have got great stories to tell. Unfortunately, I can't plug them all and share them, but I do see some good comments that I do want to share. And I want to ask you a little bit about this, Ken. So someone said, we held our most successful gala this past Saturday, and saw that desire to be with other people. I've heard from multiple people, and I know you have as well, that people are giving at these events, and they're very generous. Why is that?
I think that they're, as I touched on earlier, just like all of us. I mean, the people that come to events are just like we are. We've been on Zooms just like this. Half of our staff is remote. We are desirous of being around other human beings, and when we are, we're excited. And if you have a worthy cause and you can communicate that to me as a donor, that excites me more when I'm in person, right? If you have someone, I would imagine that this organization likely did a fund the mission or an appeal, and that was probably stronger than they've seen in years, because people were face to face with the results of the mission that they're being asked to support. And to Barbara's point, they're thanked immediately, right, with a round of applause. I've raised my bid card at $1,000, and there's 500 people clapping for me. And the excitement that builds around being in person is really what's driving the increased yield and increased funds raised.
It's terrific. It's interesting, because as I look through that side conversation, the crowdsourcing has taken over the question and answer, because as soon as I find the questions that are here, someone's answered them in the chat. So please look through those as we continue to go here. We're a little bit past our time. We always like to extend it to folks, because we have quite a few people that have stayed on. So what I'm going to do while you're scrolling through that, or if you have questions, drop them in the comment or in the question box. We'll be sure to look at those, or even just let us know, even if you haven't answered. If you want to jump on and ask some questions, we're happy to talk about them. But I'm going to go ahead, and just bring us back to a little bit of tying things up here, and just, again, from our standpoint, I've got to just practice what we preach and say thank you. It may not be enough, but we want to thank you in multiple ways. So I've learned a lot. And, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day, your busy schedules, so many things going on, and all of the good that you do to be able to join with the nonprofit community here and share and learn and grow and all of those great things. I want to extend a very special thank you from my perspective to Ken and for his expertise, again, knowing that he's running a business and doing lots of great things and helping nonprofits, big dedicated effort to helping everyone go even further. So I'm going to let Ken go ahead and share any last words that he wants to share. and then turn it back to me, and I'll turn it over to Barbara to take us out and do the
Great.
same.
Yeah, thank you, David. Barbara, it's always a pleasure to be in your presence. You're a wealth of knowledge. So, David, probably before you sign us all off, you should put her slide back up so people, if they didn't mark down her email address, they should definitely reach out to her and be added. You're welcome. Thank you all for participating. There were some questions in the chat that were directed to me specifically, and I'm having a challenge. I've tried to respond to them within the chat window, but it's not working. So, David, I'm hopeful that you can collect those for me and pass them along so I can reach out to those individuals and answer their direct questions.
Yeah. Okay,
thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a super week. October's almost over, so don't be afraid to ask your donors, and the ones that have donated, don't forget to thank them.
Again, thank you, Ken. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to just, I've thanked you multiple times in working with you, Barbara. It's always a pleasure, and you give so much to the community in so many ways. So thank you for joining us. And I'm going to turn it over to you for your final words and to close us out.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me back, David and Ken. It was great to collaborate with you on this. And I would say that for all of you who are in the front lines and serving in lots of different roles in your nonprofits, take each day as it comes, take care of yourself, and remember that not everything is going to be an urgent priority. Yes, your fundraising needs to be a priority. And if everything that's dumped on your plate is not all related to fundraising and revenue for your organization, then manage the expectations of those around you and manage your own to-do list, because you need to be able to continue to show up for work and do all the important work that you are doing for your organization and the missions that you're serving. So take good care of yourself, and remember that this is a marathon and not a sprint, although it will feel like a sprint, or at least the beginning of a sprint. But this is the long haul, and building donor relationships, it takes time, and it's not all going to happen in the next 2 months. So just be patient with yourself.
Okay, thank you again, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we'll be sending out the next question, we'll be sending out an on-demand recording as well as slides and sharing your emails with Barbara where you've asked. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful week. And until next time, stay safe and stay healthy.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.